I've got ongoing debates with several friends on a couple of different issues with conference championship games. So let me just pitch it to you. Like, where's your mind on conference championship games right now? I don't need you guys, if you're watching live, to look in the live chat. I want you to think for yourself. Everyone think for yourself before you look at the comments. Where's your head on conference championship games? I've always loved them. I grew up, like I grew up in the 2000s, 90s, 2000s. So they were around. I think the SEC started theirs in 92. The concept of a conference championship game, in other words, has always been around in my lifetime. Some of you are a little more seasoned, and you remember a time long before conference championship games existed. The Big 12s, or the Big 10s rather, isn't even 15 years old. So two things. Here's where my conundrum is. Two things. Number one, this year, are we going to have rivalry game rematches in conference championship games? There are 5 opportunities for that to happen, by the way. 3 rivalry rematch opportunities. Think about this. Michigan-Ohio State is played the last Saturday of the year. They could play that thing again 6 days later. Auburn and Alabama, less likely, but still, point remains. They play that game the last week of the year. That could turn around and be played in the SEC championship game. Texas at Texas A&M is played and could be played again 1 week later in the conference championship game. Now, why is this all of a sudden an issue now, whereas it used to not be? Well, first off, Texas and Texas A&M hadn't even been in the same conference until this year. Auburn, Alabama, and Michigan, Ohio State were in the same divisions for a long time, so it was impossible for the rematch to happen. We are doing away with divisions in both conferences starting this year, but we're not changing the schedule, so therefore we have a potential issue on our hands. But here's the thing. Some of you don't think it's an issue, I've found out. Now, many more of you agree with me than I thought would agree with me, so I take some comfort in that. But here's what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, firstly, Michigan, Ohio State, let's say they play. It is the greatest rivalry in college football. Some say the greatest rivalry in sports. I've been at the last 3 games. It is an unbelievable environment, and I wasn't born into the rivalry. So I just observe it from afar. What if they play that and it has all the urgency and all the buildup and all the drama and the hype and the over-the-cliff, face in the fan, zero margin for error, aura about it? But what if we get that this year and we already know they're going to play the game again 6 days later? There are 2 schools of thought on this, and I cannot buy into the other one. The first school of thought is you can't possibly have that situation and maintain maximum urgency on the original game. You can't. You absolutely cannot. That's my school of thought. The other school of thought is more of a good thing is a good thing. Well, if it's awesome 1 week, it'll be awesome if they play it again a week later. But it won't be as awesome. There's no logical way for you to convince me that if I'm watching Michigan, Ohio State, and the entire week leading up to it, I know they're going to play again no matter what, 7 days later, 6 days later, that it feels the same. There's no possible way. The most traditional purist in the world, in other words, me, couldn't even say, oh, don't worry, it won't lose its relevance. So that's the first issue that we could potentially have. The second issue I have baked into that first issue is I don't care that the following week would have a conference championship on the line. I don't care that the following week would have a first-round bye and the playoff on the line. I don't care that playoff implications are riding more on the second game than the original, because the original means more to me. This is where I think some are just going to disagree with me, but let me tell you where I come from. I come from a place, in my mind, where the regular season of college football is it for me, and everything else is just kind of cherry on top. It is what it is, but it's the regular season for me. There's nothing like it in sports. And within the regular season, we have rivalries. And within that small cluster of rivalries, we have certain ones like Ohio State and Michigan that are second to none. And they've played that thing for over a century. Without fail, it delivers. The hype is unmatched. The urgency, the intensity, just the pure, unadulterated hatred is unmatched. I grew up in the South. I didn't know it because I wasn't immersed in it. I watched it from a distance, but I've witnessed it 3 years in a row. I've witnessed that. Some would say maybe I'm a good luck charm for Michigan. I don't want to suggest that. I don't want to suggest that. Too many friends in Columbus. Don't want to suggest that. But here's what I will suggest. I don't care if the following week it's a conference championship game in some sterilized NFL venue. Ohio State versus Michigan, the rivalry game, is institutionalized in my mind. It always has been. It was as if it was created on the seventh day instead of rest. That's what that game means to me. That's what that game means to a college football purist. The Big Ten championship the following week, it's man-made. Like it's got an artificial feel in my mind compared to what the game feels like to me. And it's a cash grab, and those conference championship games always have been. And in the expanded playoff era, I'm not even sure where they fit anymore, but yet they'll try to sell me on that game being played 7 days later having more significance than the game itself. You will never sell me on that. You simply cannot. And so I may differ with some of you. I had someone going back and forth with me today, and they said, Ohio State versus Michigan, the regular season game, is just for those fan bases. But Ohio State versus Michigan in the Big Ten championship game with playoff implications on the line, that impacts the whole country. The whole country's already impacted by that game. You don't have to have direct rooting interest. You don't have to have grown up in like Sault Ste. Marie or Akron. You don't have to be from these places. You don't have to be of those fan bases. If you say that, I just don't think you have a firm grasp on what rivalry college football is all about. So that's the first problem. Here's the second potential problem. Could it be advantageous to not make your conference championship game? Just take Ole Miss, for example. You could pick any of a number of teams from a couple of power conferences, but could it be advantageous to kind of secretly want to miss out on your conference championship game? Let's say Ole Miss is 10-2. They just miss out on going to Atlanta. They don't play for the SEC championship, but they're 10-2. They know they're in the playoff. They're going to be a really high seed. They don't have to go and potentially lose in the conference championship game. They're 10-2. They're a very, very highly ranked SEC team. They end up locking down the 5 seed, which means in their first round game, they play in Oxford. They play a home playoff game against the 12 seed, which is most likely the G5 team. And then they win that game, and you know who their next opponent would be in the bracket? It would likely be the lowest ranked conference champ. Now, that conference champ has a bye in the first round, but that conference champ also may be from the Big 12. Also may be a touchdown plus underdog to Ole Miss, even though Ole Miss is not rested and you are. And so Lane Kiffin or Ole Miss or any of a number of teams you could insert here could look and say, wait, would we rather risk going to Atlanta and losing to Georgia and still having to play in the first round, or would we rather just accept the 5 seed, get rested up, and go into the playoff with a very favorable draw? Given that we don't have any stated protocols that prevent that, yeah, that's a very real possibility, which again begs the question. If Ole Miss sits there 10-2, doesn't go to Atlanta, locks down the 5 seed and a favorable draw, they have been in a better position than, say, Texas, who does go and play Georgia and lose to Georgia and have to play in the first round as a lower seed with a worse draw. Where's the incentive? The incentive, of course, is, well, Josh, they could have won the game and they could have gotten a first round bye. Yeah, but here's the follow-up logic there. What sense does it make to force your 2 best teams to go play a game that exists for cash? Just be real about it. It exists so you can line your pockets further. And you've baked in this whole first round bye possibility, but you're telling me the losing team is worse off for playing there? So, to my knowledge, the committee has not come out and stated any protocol that's like a fail-safe against this. And what I mean by that is, if they came out tomorrow and they said there will be no instance where a team from a conference loses their conference title game and drops below another team in that conference that didn't play in the conference championship game. Hey, if they come out and say that, then it makes a little more sense. But they haven't said that. Have they? Jesse, I have not heard a single word like that. So I keep coming back to this question in my mind that I rarely do. I rarely do this kind of stuff because it sounds really hot take-ish, and we don't do that on this show. This is not a hot take. It's just a genuine question. Is there still a place for conference championship games in college football? Now, here's what I didn't say. What I didn't say is, will they get rid of them? Oh, they won't get rid of them. They make too much money. So let me ask it a different way. Because nobody involved in this show, nobody listening to or watching this show actually makes any of that money. So that doesn't impact us. So let me ask you like this. If I removed the payday, would any of these conferences still play these games? The answer is a hard no. So it's very obvious we're not playing it for the integrity of the game, for the betterment of the sport, to better or further the product. We're playing the game so a few people can make a lot of money. Even having said that, are you going to build in parameters that make those games still make sense? Are the games still going to feel as significant? I have no idea. Because like you, I'm experiencing the expanded playoff era for the first time. But I'm very interested, that scenario I just painted, the Ole Miss Texas scenario. For example, that benefits Ole Miss. It benefited Ole Miss to not go to Atlanta and let Texas go there and lose. Like, Ole Miss ended up better because of that. There is no logic where that makes sense, or there's no logic in that making sense. It doesn't, but right now it could happen. So we'll see how that works out.